You have the health stuff, you've got the pressure, you've got the leadership challenges, you've got we're not on the same page, we're not in unity. You got all this stuff happening, your marriage is not getting closer together, it's maybe getting further away.
Yeah.
I started to drink too much to cope with the emotional pressure of business. And then I started to smoke weed. Are you living to your highest potential? Are you being the man that your wife, your kids need you to be?
Welcome back to another Business, Family, Marriage podcast episode. I am excited to dive into this one today. It's a really good interview I did with a guy named Sean Cannell. If you don't know who Sean is, he is an entrepreneur, a business owner. He has grown a successful business around YouTube strategy, YouTube growth. Sean and I have known each other for a very long time, even before the days of video creators. Back in the very early days, a few years after YouTube started, he and I were both active on the platform, and we connected on YouTube because of what we were doing there, but also because we were both working at churches at the time and doing ministry stuff. He'll share part of that story here. And it's so cool just to see where Sean has come from being a youth ministry intern, a church intern, to now a successful multi-million-dollar business. His story, though, is not without challenges. As any entrepreneur, as any business owner knows, it's had an impact on his family. It's had an impact on his own health and mental health. It's had an impact on a lot of things. And what I did recently, as we were both speaking at an event out in California, and so I asked Sean, can we sit down and just talk about the impact that being a business owner has had on your marriage and on your family and on your mission as an individual, but also for your company. And Sean was very transparent. This is one of the favorite interviews that I've done here on this podcast. So I'm really excited to talk with you about it. As I was listening back to our conversation, I wrote down so many notes from Sean. So I want to cut to this interview with him, but then I'll be back at the end, and I want to just go over some of the things that stood out to me and why they stood out to me, and just add some just some of the things I've been thinking and processing around the topics of communication with your spouse and mental health and all the issues that related to how do we build fruitful families, businesses, and marriages all at the same time. That is one endeavor that is certainly challenging. So let's dive into this conversation with Sean, and I'll be back in a bit.
Welcome to the Business, Family, Marriage podcast with Tim Schmoyer. This is his personal podcast where he shares what he's learning about growing a 7-figure business while also raising 7 children and deepening his relationship with his wife at the same time. He shares what he's learning, what's worked, what hasn't, what he's trying next to grow a fruitful business, family, and marriage. For more on that today, here's Tim.
Sean, tell us a little bit about your business and what you do on YouTube. Tell us the story of how it got started to where you are today.
Yeah. So, if we kind of do, back to the future, where we are today is super weird. I'm a college dropout, small town kid. My business, Think Media, was co-founded by my wife, Sonia, and I. We're 50-50. She's the CFO. I'm the CEO. It's super weird. I actually hate the word CEO because I don't think I am one. I'm a founder, but trying to figure out how to be a CEO, that's a whole different thing. But we're 18 W-2 employees and 8 contractors.
Over how many years since you started?
Since we started 2019, we became an S Corp. The first couple of years of business, I was a sole proprietor. Okay. That's not a good strategy. Right, yeah. It was sole proprietor and all contractors.
Sure.
In terms of just figuring out really entrepreneur, take the plane off and paint it while it's in the air and you're still constructing one of the wings. Yep, and I'd say we're still doing that, but we're getting a little more stable now. And so, and multiple 7 figures a year. So, payroll is over $1 million and it's
taxes
and it's super wild where we've come. And so it all started, we teach YouTube and are also heavy in teaching essentially video. So there's a big brand deal component working with Canon and Sony and doing camera tutorials and video editing software, multiple content creators now. there's the brand deals, there's the affiliates, there's the YouTube ads on that side, and then the YouTube education side would be the course and a book, YouTube Secrets, co-authored by Benji Travis. Second edition just came out. Have ran an event, and have done a lot of things. And so what's interesting is the business is about 7 years old. We're in year 7, but there's the like 7 plus to 10 years before that, which was the formulation leading up to it. So I started my first YouTube channel for my church in 2007, just 2 years after YouTube started.
That's about when we met, right?
That's right around when we met. And I started video in 2003. So I've been doing video for 20 years, YouTube for 16. And it's been a crazy journey. And I've got actually quite a few scars, I'd say, from trying to figure out how to build a company, trying to transform into a leader, and then also we had kids late. So now we have a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. Been married 17 years, and it's been a wild journey to be through marriage and building a company and the ups and downs. And we've experienced a lot of success, but we've had a lot of, I would say, failures and challenges along the way too.
Sure. As you guys were growing this business over the past decade, is that right?
Yeah, 7 years.
7 years?
Officially that I went into full-time entrepreneurship out of freelance work, out of everything else. 7 years just kind of making money for ourselves, essentially.
Yeah. You indicated that there's a lot of challenges with that. As you're growing the business, what were some of those main challenges for your family, and especially for your marriage at that point when it's just you and Sonia? What were some of those main challenges you guys faced as you were growing the business?
I think the first big one was when this was a side hustle. I was a campus pastor for a church for a while, and that was a really dark season. To put so much light on the church, although there's challenges there, but we moved to Irvine, California. My wife has gone through lots of health challenges, and so there was but even during this time, there was a time where she was prescribed by doctors who, in hindsight, we don't believe are making the best decisions, especially because she has gastroparesis, she has stomach issues. They put her on methadone, which is heavy and really hardcore, and is actually a net negative to your actual stomach and digestion, but simply just a pain medication that really kind of reduces your quality of life, although really masks the pain.
Wow. So
there's that aspect of it. Then there's the aspect of we were in kind of a new city, and we were a part of a merger takeover of a church that was, a state away from the home church. And in the most high pressure leadership season of my life. And then simultaneously, there was some challenges where my wife and I were not in unity in terms of the vision of what was happening. And
in the home or in the business or both?
Well, in the business, yes, which would just be a side hustle at that time, trying to do some YouTube on the side. We needed to do YouTube because, or something on the freelance clients, essentially. I was doing more like YouTube management and some video production, because cost of living in Irvine was 70% higher than Las Vegas. And my salary, while I got a small salary bump, it was still far beneath what we needed to live on. And I earned $52,000 on the side that year, and we still were draining our savings based on the area we were living. And I'm sure we could have been more, but we weren't living crazy. Just rent. The apartment we lived in paid each dog. We had 2 dogs. They charged like $100 each dog and all kind of stuff. So that kind of thing. Irvine's expensive. And so you kind of had that financial pressure. The biggest one would be, though, we were in disunity related to the church stuff. And it was this has been a problem in our marriage on my end, where there's been times where my wife has felt like accurately observed that I would take other people's sides when she had like real sincere discernment about issues going on. And I would defend others or not. And it's not even just about siding with her, would just kind of like discount or write off, or even whether it was even just an opinion, really not cling and cleave to her versus defend or things that she was concerned with or she wasn't really bought in or in unity for. So because of that, you've got the health challenges, you've got, by the way, and since then she's been an absolute warrior and rock star through all these seasons. And she's been able to, through better counsel, have complete transformation in terms of health, but you have the health stuff, you've got the pressure, you've got the leadership challenges, you've got, we're not on the same page, we're not in unity. You've got just the overall leadership pressure of that season. And our marriage,
financial pressure, it sounds like, too.
Financial pressure.
On top.
Yeah. So it was brutal, man. And I mean, there was even I remember during that season, like a conversation came up, and I don't remember how it came up, but I know that I didn't lie to her, and the conversation of porn came up, and I remember she was like, have you looked at porn or whatever? And so we just started getting real about that. And then it was one of those things where, very empathetically, with no defense of myself, but you go into the situation where you got all this stuff happening, your marriage is not getting closer together, it's maybe getting further away.
Yeah.
And you're, emotionally trying to cope or whatever as a male. And again, taking extreme ownership. There was some heavy stuff. That conversation's happening, like heavy, and then at the same time, we're also in way over our heads from a leadership standpoint at a merger takeover of a brand new church. That I did more funerals than I did weddings.
Oh, wow.
At this church,
yeah,
with an older congregation and statewide.
So this is still prior to even starting Think Media? Well, no, Think Media started before, but starting like full time into it, or is this all at the same time?
This was Think Media started in 2010 in terms of uploading a video.
Sure.
One of the biggest mistakes I made in hindsight was dividing my focus, because I had Think Media, I had my Sean Cannell channel.
I remember that one. I
had a video production channel, Clear Vision Media, which by this time it had stopped. I had Think International with Jeff Moores, right, which had, we did a few, it had slowed down by this time, but it was more of the church ministry side.
Sure.
And then at one point, towards the end of the season, Benji and I started Video Influencers, because we were on a drive and I heard about this thing called Book in a Box Today, Scribe. And we're like, what if we wrote a book, because we both have been doing YouTube and we combine our knowledge.
Yeah.
And Video Influencers ended up being a project to promote the book. And so definitely the entrepreneur side of like seeing lots of shiny objects and wanting to start every project all at once. Those weren't like all operational then, but basically, I was, as a campus pastor, working 40, 50 hours a week, as you would. And then on the side hustle, trying to chip away at these other projects. And it wasn't until we moved back to Vegas, we moved out of Irvine back to Vegas, and I went full-time freelance. And so I was no longer a campus pastor, but the church did hire me for a while to do manage the lead pastor's YouTube channel and some content and chop it all up. And I had 3 freelance clients, and I did that for about a year, trying to chip away at Think Media, a little bit on the tech review side. And by this time we started some Video Influencers interviews. And so all of that to say, at least the takeaway entrepreneurially was, had I concentrated my focus, or even concentrated my focus in a side hustle, maybe would have got further faster. But in hindsight, also just that much hustle and whatnot, learned a lot from all these different projects.
And I think a challenge that a lot of business owners and creators have is, including myself, it sounds like you too, is like, as we're really focused on trying to build this thing or multiple things all at once, the thing that gets often neglected are the relationships at home with kids, with our spouse. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that something that happened to you, or what role did the business play in terms? Was it like a distraction? You have bigger vision and aspirations for the business than the home, or what happened? What did that look like for you guys?
So I think that it's a great conversation. My wife is given counsel to other couples that have a husband that wants to do entrepreneurship, and she's been the listening ear to maybe a wife who is saying, I just can't handle it. How if he's hustling all day in his main job, and then at night he's got to work in his side job, when do we get to see each other? And I think the key is self-awareness, and you need to know who your partner is and who you are, and you need to communicate in this regard. And she's like, what are you talking about? That's the cost of entrepreneurship. That's the cost. So she's like, yeah, that's what, you're telling me that this is going to maybe take more than 40 hours a week. This is a conversation she was having with somebody.
Sure.
So from that standpoint, that has not been, and no kids at the time, that has not been an issue in our marriage. The issue was lack of communication, things that broke trust.
Yeah.
not being unified in our vision or in the season, not being like, we're on the same team and we're doing this. I feel like you're siding with other people, and in greater depth of things that would have been the opposite of, at least in building her up and strengthening our marriage, is I generally lean diplomatic. I lean passive. In terms of my biological father, I also have a stepdad. Avoiding conflict, and none of these things are helpful. And I would say, what I've had to learn is I've had to like man up, grow a pair, not be afraid of conflict. Even to this day, I need to learn this stuff more. But there would be times where what she was deeply clinging for was, I remember we were in a kind of a counseling session because I was a campus pastor with another couple or individual that wasn't even a counseling session. It was like a church leadership. This person was kind of doing some toxic stuff, and so we had to address it, and we were all there. And this guy started acting or talking to my wife in a way that wasn't appropriate. I was just telling Kyle on our team at lunch, we were talking about how one time my grandpa kicked us out of his house and was cussing my wife out. And I was just kind of like shell shocked. And I was telling one of the biggest things I should have grown on, and what I wish I would have done different, is I would have stood up and said, like, you don't talk to my wife that way. And that kind of stuff. And I've been more, so it wasn't as much the time thing, but I think what she wanted was, someone to fight for her, someone to step up, someone to be a man, someone to lead, someone to communicate, someone to take that fierce responsibility. But from an entrepreneurship side, the incredible thing that has made us a great team was, I think, there's like the Dave Ramsey quote of, if we live today like no one else, we can live the rest of our lives and give like no one else. Right. Because in the sacrifice of all of the bumpiness of that season, she was never like trying to, she was like, it wasn't like, don't do a side hustle. Don't build this dream that we're both unified on. Don't build this thing that's going to set up our future and hopefully our kids and our legacy. She was like, just don't look at porn. Stand up for me. Yeah. Let's be unified. If I see issues in discernment and relationships of sketchy stuff that's happened around, don't side with those people, side with me. Yeah. And if, I'm not saying my track record in discernment is perfect, but it's been pretty solid when I can see people that are shady, or people that are narcissists, or people that are lying, or people, and you're like defending these other people and not seeing. And so we've been married 17 years, and I'm just learning. It's like learning to trust her, learning to lean on some of that stuff, and also learning, because you go to the other side, like it's also, even if she was wrong, what matters more? Like, if your wife and you are not in unity, just taking that side, maybe you miss out on an opportunity. Maybe you avoid absolute devastation because of a shady person or a shady business deal or something. I mean, in 2022, last year, we went through kind of one of the sponsors of our event that was kind of partnered, that ended up, he's in jail now. And he's, she had a bad feeling about this individual, like from the start. But I didn't involve her in the conversation at the start. And she was, towards the end, she was like, and she's a spirit-filled, faith-filled, prayed up, Bible reading, powerful woman of God that has legit the gift of discernment. And she was like, this person is dangerous. This person is somebody we should not be doing business with. I do not have a good feeling about this. And I'm also kind of like, the train has left the station, and she's like, but you need to promise me, like, we're not going to do future stuff with this person. And I'm like, relax. Like, we go to the same church. And it turns out, like, this guy was a sexual predator of his own kids, had child porn on his phone. Oh, wow. And like, we're talking. And so all that to say is, like, she has a pretty wild, verifiable track record of, so it has been, these are some of the biggest mistakes I have made as a leader, of not trusting her or working on building on that trust, not necessarily listening, not standing up for her, not, and needing to grow in my courage and confidence to be a man in terms of defending her. And all the above. So that's a lot of stuff we learned. And that's all, thank God, as we were coming into the very beginnings of Think Media, which this isn't even, I got more stories for you, but like, as we were coming to the beginnings of Think Media, we had already worked through quite a bit, because of some of the stuff we were working. As we came back to Vegas, I'd say our marriage was getting much stronger, getting healed up. We kind of were able to distance ourselves from that past season. There was kind of some church hurt for a while stuff that her and I both were going through, coming out of that. And to this day, there was, for example, one of our team members years ago told another team member in the church lobby, they had all this conversation like about her, kind of like slandering her and some other stuff. I can't remember how we got the information, but we did. And my immediate reaction was like, get that conversation started, sit that person down. And I was like, we need to set some boundaries. This is never how you talk about any team member. Forget that this is my spouse. This is toxic if on any team.
You let the person go?
I addressed it. I did not let the person go at the time, but they broke down. They fully received the truth of the confrontation. But again, I in the past, I probably would have slept under the rug. And I was like, and not only it's just not like favoritism for my wife, like toxic is toxic. Like that's not good. That's not healthy. But secondly, this is my freaking wife. So by the way, so this is dumb on like 3 levels too, because like it's toxic regardless, but like you could be, and so like we need to have proper boundaries of respect. And I even learned that like because of the nature of like affirming who she is as a person, as a leader, we're both, I'm also I shine much more. It's a weird thing to say, but I just mean I'm on camera. So I'm the one who gets the visual accolades. She's behind the scenes. And even in the Bible, it talks about like the unseen parts of the body are worthy of double honor and should be talked about. But sometimes that's kind of forgotten about. Like the unseen or those are who really makes it happen. That's the muscle, that's the strength. And so I've made the mistake of not even fully trying to do my best to honor her, but not honoring her at the highest level of her gifts. Thinking, are we really that good at finances? Like she's the CFO. Are we really that good? And now I've learned as people have like got inside of our QuickBooks and our books, and we work with some other professionals externally, they're like, we've never seen finances so organized. Oh, wow. We've never seen it. She'll catch people spending money wrong on credit cards. She's now caught people that are stealing from our company and whatnot. So then I start realizing, I'm like, man, I am actually working for an absolute rock star. I'm working for true. And, that she is, it's like Proverbs 31 woman, like she, like, let her be a woman who fears God. She's greatly to be praised, give her the accolades that she's due. And so I want to be a person. I believe honor should be given where honor is due. I've done my best at that, but I've also fallen short in starting to acknowledge so to say, as we got into Think Media, I think that's a big thing about making mistakes and failures. I've made more failures than anybody, more mistakes than anybody. I think the opportunity is failures are the stepping stones to success. And hopefully as we learn those things, I also wish it maybe would have been faster. Like I maybe haven't grown into the bold, confident, confrontational man that I need to be and leader, but I've grown and I've tried to point, I've seen that quicker to just like schedule the conversation, get on the phone, address the issue. Yeah. You don't talk about my wife that way, not in some weird toxic. You don't talk about anybody that way. We allow no toxic behavior on our team. We don't allow, and I've made mistakes with that over the years, but growing in being quick to have crucial conversations, difficult conversations, and hold a line of truth and integrity and ethic. Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about business for me is that the more I was developing skills for growing a business, being a leader, being a CEO, the more I was carrying those new skills I was developing to the family. Right. I was learning how to be more diplomatic with my kids, and lead the family better. I was learning I have a vision for my business. I should have a vision for my family, and the vision for the family should be bigger than the one for the business. Right. And those types of things. One of the things that came up when you sharing your stories coming up for me is that you and your wife work together in your business, right?
Yeah.
My wife and I did for a few years. It started mostly just me, and then as it was growing, I needed some help, and she's really detail oriented, so she jumped into the finances as well, started learning about how to do that, and did that for a few years until we were acquired last September, and now she's out. And that was really good for us to learn how to work together. A lot of not so great stuff came out of that.
Yeah.
But in the long run became great. it's usually not recommended that spouses work together
100%
in business. We did it, and I think it was, in the long run, it was fruitful for our relationship. But I don't think it always works that way. What did that look like for you? Like, how do you two work together in a business but still maintain the relational part of the marriage? And just describe that. They're like boundaries, like we only talk about work stuff at this time and then we don't? Or is it like it brings you together relationally because you're on the same team linking arms in the business? Or what does that dynamic look like? And what advice would you have for others?
In the past, I wanted to talk about business all the time, probably too much. And her main message would probably be like, give it a break. And that's kind of my personality as well. Like we'd be on a trip to Leavenworth, Washington, where we love to go during Christmas or holidays, snowy town, get away, spend some time together. And we'd be driving there. And this is like the conversation you usually get with me, probably 20 questions all the time. And I'd be like, so what is our vision for the next 25 years?
For the business or the family?
For family, whatever. What are like, let's talk about our goals. And this is very triggering. She'd be like, how about we just decompress? Talk about why is it goals 24/7, vision? Or like, what if we start investing in real estate? What if we start, like with me, I am always like, even if it's not business, it's like, what if we start doing like rental properties? Hey, do you want to look at these rental properties on Zillow? And she'd be like, can we listen to like Taylor Swift and just chill out?
Can we just hold hands and just be quiet together for a little bit?
Yeah. Or talk about family or like, whatever. And so I think this is seasons though. So it'd be the season of, wanting to talk about business or entrepreneurship or personal growth or goal setting or all this kind of stuff. And that may be frustrating her in a season where she feels overwhelmed. Then there was actually maybe growth in me where my ambition, I think, got a little more tempered. I think it's really good to have ambition, but not toxic ambition.
Yeah.
And so where I started to be like more, let me just decompress. If business is over, I am just trying to like chill out. Let's talk about nothing, or let's just talk about let me just have some space. And so maybe there was a season where we're in sync. Well, now you fast forward to today and there's these levels of growth of leadership and challenges of having as many team members where we're realizing we're decompressing what happened on a meeting that morning. Is someone's energy off? Is their vibe off? This is something I'm noticing that's happening. This is something that's happening in the finances. And she's bringing that stuff up at, 5, 6, 7, 8 at night in bed. And I'm like, what the heck? When did you become? Can I just
listen to Taylor Swift right now?
Yeah, can I just listen to my Taylor Swift and my Apple AirPods? Like, what is happening? So I think that just illustrates that for us, it's like been a real evolution. And it's just been an evolution of the challenge. One of the things we were talking about, lamenting in a way, was we've gone through a couple team member transitions. One of them that happened this year that unfortunately had a lot of unnecessary drama around it. This individual just did some weird, dumb personal decisions in their own timing that then got projected onto us. And we're like, what the heck do we have to do with any of this?
Yeah.
Like, we're just, all we were doing was, and then we realized though, that we were talking about these things over the weekend, that we were carrying this stuff into, cause you start like, you still, even I like to be liked. You got to be a boss, but you also, we're learning about like, are you everybody's friend? Are you also a boss? Is this a family? What is this? And then we're thinking, dude, as the freaking owners of this thing, we're carrying the financial issues, the team issues, and it is Saturday, it is Sunday. And even if we're not working, the emotional pressure or the mental stuff is 24/7. And Sonia's like, I'm trying to be a mom.
Yeah.
And I love our company, but like, what the heck? And then I'm talking, so we're processing lately, what are the skill sets we need? What level of therapy do we need to be able to turn it on, to turn it off? Because you could say, turn it off. How do you turn it off?
Do you guys practice like a Shabbat or a Sabbath regularly?
We,
not poking at anything, just curious.
The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, really good book, and been loving his stuff. And there's a couple other good ones. The guy who wrote The Blessed Life has a good Sabbath book, Robert Morris. We do. I think what we have also for ourselves drawn boundaries of, because we've been in ministry so much, it was hard to like not be if we're not in like active ministry.
Yeah.
So getting our identity that as entrepreneurs and business owners that generate, that God gives us power to produce wealth so we can confirm the covenant, that one of our primary ways of serving is giving. Two, we actually are pretty outspoken about our faith in terms of our content. So we understand even having that missional ministry side of things. But being able to draw a line to say that really Sunday for us is go to church to receive, connect with people, is good. Rest and take a nap, is hopefully don't shop, don't buy anything, not in a religious sense, but like decompress, read, hang with the kids, go on a walk, take Sean Bradley to the park, sleep, eat, celebrate. And it could be Saturday, but like, so we've been decent probably. And so I'd actually say yes. And it's been a game changer.
Good.
Yeah. And then realizing that there could be pressure either internally, externally, or from a million angles, but saying that like, that's a big deal, even just to maintain survival and to have that reset of business and health.
Yeah, we found that with Sabbath, it's like one of those things, like even at first, it was first triggered for me by the book, Tim Keller, Every Good Endeavor. And I was like, oh, I'm a slave to work. Like I am not a free person. I think I'm an entrepreneur. I think I'm my own boss, but I'm not. I can't turn this thing off. And I had to train myself and continually practice and prepare for Sabbath so that when Sabbath came, I could turn it off. But it took a lot of practice to get to the point where it's like, now it's life-giving and I'm really good at like turning it off now, So that took a lot of training and practice and time. Last thing I want to hear about from you is that you've said a few times, I think it's totally true, I've noticed this myself too, is that the skills we're acquiring and learning and developing in our business are also skills that transfer to other areas of our life, particularly in our marriage and our family. And a lot of the stories you've been sharing, what I've been hearing is you've been developing as a person, as a leader in your business. You're standing up to these people. You're having these hard conversations. You're not as passive as you were. What would you say are like some of the top skills? And maybe it's just leadership, but like you've developed it in the business, but developing that skill in the business had an impact on your marriage and your family, and those skills like transferred and just made both the business and the family more fruitful.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What are some of those?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one huge one, which is like the marriage ultimate buzzword, is communication. And being forced into different communication dynamics and finding that I better understanding my wife because of working together, better understanding and having to work through issues. It's kind of like if people are dating. I think one of the worst things young couples that maybe want to get married is they get enamored with somebody and they want to get married or they get excited and they've never experienced time with that person under pressure. And they've never experienced time with that person in divergent situations. So it's one thing, you've been on a bunch of dates with the person. Well, it's always like their best scenario. You've been on dates with the person, but we weren't living through a pandemic. Like, what's their level of emotional stability? How do they act in this situation, that situation? How do they act with this form of pressure and that form of pressure? So I think that going through different challenging scenarios and different scenarios of pressure, I haven't been very vocal about my emotions and expect my wife to read my mind or how I'm feeling or my way of, I react to her saying the wrong things maybe with a tone. There was this book, and I forget the study, but there was a book that actually observing how couples communicate, the psychologist could predict if they would be divorced or not. And the telltale sign was, do they cut each other down? Do they have passive aggressive tone? Do they have kind of not just joking, but like negative joking in it? Sarcasm? Or do they actually, even if they fight fair and there's clear communication in them? So I've also, even in my communication, I might be more passive because I maybe dance around my emotions as opposed to, so that the power of business is, I would say, entrepreneurship. There is no greater form of pressure. It's brutal.
Do or die.
And so,
well, not die, but get a job, I guess, which feels like death to some people.
Yeah. And so I think that it has helped our communication for sure. I think that all the transformation I've been going through, simply trying to survive as a business leader and grow, I have no credibility yet to say that this has worked because my kids are only 6 months and 2.5 years. So I'm a brand new newbie, know absolutely nothing, but at least I am confident that I'm becoming a more assertive leader, a better visionary. You know, another way to put it, with absolute love and respect for working with a team. But I heard another entrepreneur talk about, he was like, these are my kids, man. He's like, I got to remind them today. I got to remind them tomorrow. And he was talking to business owners, and he was like, you think that like you don't have to like stay on top of it, management by walking around, even if you have amazing people. He was like, dude, I got to tell them the same thing like every single day in terms of getting people motivated, recasting the vision leaks, and clarifying the vision. Different people hear the vision differently. Different people are motivated by different things on your team. Not everybody's motivated by money. They're motivated by lifestyle. So even as I approach fatherhood, not to insinuate our team are children,
sure,
but to insinuate that those same ideas, not every child's going to receive the same way. Right. Different love languages. Yeah. The 5 love languages of marriage, the 5 love languages of the workplace.
That's right.
The 5 love languages of children. Right. And so I think the empathy that has been cultivated from being a business leader and growing a business has really prepared me, and maybe just maturity in general through all the years. I mean, again, I'm going to turn 40 this year. And again, my son will be 3 at that time. And so we're just getting started, having kids a little bit later in life. And I definitely am, I'm super excited because of you got to roll with the punches. Everyone, all of our friends that we were in a church internship together, all got married and pregnant. We all got married at the same time, but they all got pregnant at 20 and 21, small church community, so and stuff. Like
teenagers now.
They all got teenagers. Yeah. And it was mainly like we were on that same trajectory until my wife got sick 2 years after we got married, gastroparesis, then that whole journey. But we really look back, and what's actually fascinating and so inspiring about Sonia is she even has articulated, she goes, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change getting sick with a chronic illness.
Yeah. And
that kind of resonated with me because I was like, had you asked me, I would say I would change it, especially for defense of you, like seeing what you've gone through, seeing the pain and the stuff you've gone through. But then even as I see her courage and boldness and even understanding the mysterious ways that God works, she's like, how it changed us, how it brought us closer together ultimately. It could have broke us, but it did bring us closer together. How it changed me and the empathy and humility it gave me, how it made me depend on God more, and ultimately where we are as like the different things that it set in motion in our life. So ultimately, you definitely have to play the hand you're dealt.
Yeah.
Whether you get married young, you're never ready, but I do definitely feel like we're in a place of more stability in who I am, even as a man, and my convictions and my character and how it's been refined over the years. Having kids was also a really good kick in the pants that grew me up.
Mm-hmm. I tell people that all the time. They don't believe me until they do it.
Yeah, as soon as, and I mean,
mature way faster.
We don't even have, I don't know how long you want to take this, but the other like interesting season of our life was as the mounting pressure of business around 2018, 19, I started to drink too much to cope with the emotional pressure of business. And then I started to smoke weed, and I'm talking $300, $400 a week, to numb the just emotional pressure and kind of escape, and B, also just, I would say, also just general lack of character, although I look at it in terms of, just the wrong way to process. And among multiple things that kind of kicked me out of that, one of which was kids. Mm-hmm. As I started to be like, who do I want to be for my, and as I was battling demons, I would say, from my past and generationally, my dad has struggled with addiction. My grandfather struggled with addiction. So even being a little bit more self-aware too, that there's certain things that can become a problem for certain people more than others. That would be one. If like, there's certain things that I'm not worried about, like the temptations that would probably never fall. But that's one that like that could get its claws inside of my life a little bit more. You add on pressure. You add on having some money, some resources, and a little bit of heart sickness, because I've always wanted to start a family. We see this miracle in God's goodness to essentially have a miracle baby in terms of the health and different challenges that happened in 2020. As we were leading up to that, one of those final things that just broke off, you could call it childish behaviors, just dumb behavior, whatever. Like, if anything else, it's like, dude, have kids. And I know what's funny though, is that's not a guarantee, because for some men, they leave their families, they run away, they abandon their wives and kids. So you do have a fork in the road. Yeah. But as I looked at that fork, I was like, man, who do I want to be for my kids? And I heard from somebody too, like, you know, what you as a leader or what you as a father tolerate in moderation, the next generation or your kids will do in excess.
I think that's true. I never heard of that, but that.
And so
My story.
Even if I thought, you know, like I do not believe as a Christian man that wants to live out the Bible to the best of my ability in an orthodox fashion, believing cover to cover that this is a rule of life, that the lifestyle I was living was biblical. So that's one thing. That'd be my conviction in terms of smoking $400 of weed a week and drinking 1 or 2 drinks a night and more on the weekends. I don't think that is the lifestyle of a Christian person. You know, I don't know if you're allowed to say that in 2023, but even if somebody tries to like, oh, it's a plant, bro, you know, like, or whatever.
God
it was
made
like,
the plant.
Yeah. Like, okay, fine. I think it also, you could take the conversation to another level. Are you living to your highest potential? Are you being the man that your wife, your kids need you to be?
Yeah.
I would say that at this moment too, like alcohol is actually kind of a neutral for me, but these days I'm not drinking at all because it's asking me, am I going to be at my best? And am I going to be sharp to be home and be present? And because even if you just have one drink and relax, am I losing my edge, especially after a long workday when I'm super tired?
Yeah.
To even be like really there and engaged. And what do I do in moderation is the next, you know, what are my sons going to see? And so kids is just, for me, been a challenge, a positive challenge, a positive opportunity to transform more as a man and in my character, to try to think, who do I want to be for Sean Bradley and John Stephen?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and the level of transparency and and vulnerability that you've risked here. So thank you for that. And looking forward to seeing how your family and your business and your marriage all become more and more fruitful as time goes on. So
Tim,
thanks,
I appreciate you. You're super inspiring. I've learned a lot from you. I bought Every Good Endeavor after you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, looking at you as a father and kids. And, you know, we've been in this game for a while now, a long time, over a decade. I was just looking at a video on our channel. You hired me, thank you, by the way.
I did?
16 years ago for like Simply Youth Ministry bumper intro or something.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
So I was looking on my Clear Vision Media channel.
Man.
So it's the one-off.
I just put you guys in touch. I don't think I hired you.
No, I made your thing. It was like, this week in youth ministry.
Mine, not Simply Youth Ministry. Mine, the Life and Student Ministry.
Yeah, Life and Student Ministry.
Oh,
You gave me like the voiceover audio file, and I like put a little TV screen.
Really?
It was like, it's on my Clear Vision Media channel because I use it as a portfolio.
Yeah.
So all that to say is being able to observe someone as I've seen people rise and fall, as I've seen people whose character has cracked under pressure, with empathy for the individual, but nevertheless, as fame and fortune and followers has maybe led people to fall into ego. Other family vloggers who've blown up their marriages, you know, there's family vloggers that had affairs or digital affairs and all this kind of stuff. I just want to say, like, your character and your consistency, I know that we are imperfect people, but like your character, your consistency, your love for God, your love for your family, and your value to put your family ahead of business and put your family ahead of what would appear the way that the world defines success. I just highly respect you. And I really think you've done it right. And it's just been an inspiring, you know, person to look at as someone who's been really stable in a world that, you know, a lot of people are building on the sand and their house comes tumbling down when pressure comes. It really looks like you guys have built your life on the rock, and it's very inspiring.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's part of my whole mission here at the Business Family Marriage Podcast, is to help other men and fathers and even business women too. But, you know, their heart gets captured by their business and by the pursuit of things, and for good reason, for practical reasons. But I think I learned the hard way that where that leads. And fortunately, I still have my wife and I still have my kids.
No doubt.
But I think that was God's grace, not necessarily because of anything I did right. And so I'm learning now a better path. And so I appreciate that. But yeah, but thank you. I appreciate hearing that from you. I loved that conversation. Just talking about that kind of stuff and being real just feels so refreshing. It feels so honoring to the challenge in front of us, and at the same time also being real about like the benefits and the rewards of it. And it's so awesome. I really loved it. I wrote down a whole bunch of notes here. And the first thing that really stood out to me was when Sean was talking about how Sonia, his wife, said like, no, like she understands it's a cost to entrepreneurship and to business ownership. And what I loved about that was that it reveals that to me that Sean and Sonia are connected on what it takes to grow a business. It's not really a comment for me on like whether or not you should be doing more than 40 hours a week or not. Just the fact that she was in tune with that with him. And I think it's so easy for us to kind of have this idea that, or not this idea, but like the way we behave is like, all right, my world is over here and my spouse's world is over there. And I am in my world and my spouse doesn't really know everything that's going on in my world. And vice versa, right? It's like, you look at your spouse and you're like, man, it must be nice to just be at home with the kids all day. Like, man, you got it really good. And your spouse is like, man, it must be great just to leave the house every day and be able to go do other things. Like, you got it really good, right? And so what I love is that they're getting together and they're talking and they're having this conversation where they know what's happening in each other's worlds, and they respect what's happening in each other's worlds. Like, man, he's working really hard. I can see that. Like, as dads, as fathers, I think as husbands, really, I think we all, like, there's something in us that we just want to feel respected by our wives, right? Like, we just want to hear that, honey, I'm really proud of you. Thank you so much for how hard you work to provide for our family. Like, as a husband, how would that make you feel if your wife said that? Would your jaw drop open and be like, are you okay? Or would that be like a normal part of the conversation? I'm not judging either way. I'm just saying, like, that type of thing really feeds the soul of fathers and as husbands. And the fact that she could see that really stood out to me. And I don't think that happens by accident. I think it becomes from communication, from letting each other into each other's worlds and into each other's lives and stories and what it looks like to be you and me, being real and honest. Not just from like a complaining standpoint, my life's so bad, you must have it better. But in a genuine, like, I understand, I won't really understand your world. I don't really understand those stresses and those pressures and what that is like. But I can see the impact it has on you, and I can honor that in you, and I can respect that in you and try to encourage you. Like, I think that would go really far just to support each other and what's happening in each other's worlds. I just really love that. Another thing that stood out to me is just how unified Sean and Sonia worked at being a couple. Not only just being unified with your spouse and each other's worlds, but about each other's needs. I love how Sonia pushed Sean. He's like, listen to me. She's like, I have discernment. I'm not maybe 100% accurate, but I can see things that need to change, and I can see when things are wrong. And so stop doing this and start doing that. I love what Sean was talking about, where it's really like, it sounds like they're communicating honestly, maybe not perfect all the time, but honestly and full of transparency about what's going on in their worlds, but also each other's needs and what they want, and listening to and leveraging the skills that each other have. Like, his wife's got the skill of discernment. My wife has that skill. I don't know that I am intentionally tapping into that, but now I feel like I should, I certainly see that in her. And what if I was more intentional about like pursuing that in my wife and helping develop that in her and be like, hey, our family needs this gift that you have, this skill that you have of discernment. There is a situation we're in right now, actually, where she had, just similar to Sonia, my wife had a pretty bad feeling about someone, but and she voiced it, but didn't really push hard because she knew there were some other things going on with that relationship between them and our family too. And here we are about a few years later, and that it would have been better for our family to just keep our distance, and so yeah, she has that too, and that was like how I do that with my employees and the people that I manage. It's like, hey, what are you really good at? What's your natural bents, your gifts, your talents, your abilities? And how do we really like help you find your zone of genius here in this company and in this organization, so you feel like you're thriving, and you're doing your best work? I could do that in my family more too. So anyway, I really like that, what Sean was talking about. And then I also really connected with the stories he shared. To me, I'll label them as, he talked about medicating success, whether it be with drugs, whether it be with porn, or it be like with whatever. There's this idea out there that if you make enough money, it will solve all your problems. And part of that's true. More money can solve some of your problems, but having more money is like a magnifying glass. It actually just exposes the deeper rooted issues that you have, your insecurities, your fears, maybe trauma from your past, maybe beliefs you hold about yourself. All of these things get magnified with money. It's just looking at what's unhealthy in you, and money just makes it bigger, and then you end up resorting to medicating it more and more and more in order to keep it suppressed, and that's just not healthy. I've shared parts of my story here before, but one of the most recent things for me is related to this has been emotional eating. One of the things I turn to is food when I have feelings I just don't feel like processing, or don't know how to process or feel. I just down some food and drown it that way. And it got to the point where a few months ago I was about to hit my record weight ever, which for me I was 189 pounds, and I should be in a healthy weight would be closer to around 160, and so. Almost 30 pounds overweight, and that bar graph just going up and to the right month after month. And part of it also, to be honest, it wasn't just eating. It was like a self-sabotage thing. I was feeling like, wow, I don't deserve the success, and I don't deserve the results that I'm getting over here, and like, who am I to like make this income and things like that. And so part of it's just kind of like a self-sabotage thing too, which wasn't heavy or healthy. It was heavy. And so this past winter I had to go to the store and I had to buy bigger clothes, and I didn't like it, but I pretended like I didn't care, and then I came home and ate more food, right? And it was just a bad spiral. So thankfully, as part of the therapy work I've been doing over the past few years, something in me eventually snapped. I listened to this podcast by Dr. Huberman, great podcast if you listen to it, all science-related stuff around health and wellness and things. And he has an episode on fasting and losing weight, and in there he talks about time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try this, and something clicked, and I stuck with it. And I don't think it was like something magical about intermittent fasting. I think it's all the therapy work I've been doing over years has been paying off in a lot of different ways. But one of them is this, and so. The past 2 months I've been doing that along with more exercise, and I finally found an exercise workout routine I actually enjoy, which is jiu-jitsu. Just got 2 promotions lately, so that's cool. But like belt rankings stuff. But so over the past 2 months I have lost almost 20 pounds in 2 months by doing time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting. And it's getting the summertime right now, and I'm wearing clothes right now that I couldn't fit into last summer. So I feel better. I'm working with a functional medicine doctor to really take care of a lot of other things I need to address with my health. A part of my vision for our family is like I want us to be in a financial position where when our kids grow up, if they choose to have their own kids one day, I want them to be in a place where they can have, where my wife and I can retire early and just go support their families in those times, in that season of life if they need it. My wife and I, we had 7 kids in 8 years. That is a very intense season of life. We hired a nanny full time for a while in there to just really help us get through that, and that was absolutely necessary. but I know what it's like, and I want it to be an enjoyable, fruitful time for our kids. And so we've been working hard at getting to a financial place where we'll be able to do that one day, whether we got to fly to where they're at, or buy homes in whatever neighborhoods they're in, or something like that. But then I realized none of that matters if I don't take care of my physical body, right? Like if I'm sick, if I'm tired, if I'm overweight, I don't have energy, I can't sleep well, I'm just tired. That whole vision doesn't matter. And so I don't know. I just really appreciate what Sean talked about there is a real thing that happens where success exposes a lot of what's deeper inside of you. And I would just encourage anyone who's, that's in you, there's unhealthy behaviors and you don't know what they're rooted in, and you don't know how to stop the addictions, you don't know how to fight the thing that is your enemy that is pulling you down. Therapy has been awesome for me and my wife. We go separately and done a few sessions together as well, but it's good. You pay someone to listen to your problems, and they help you navigate it, and you walk out a better person, hopefully, assuming you go into it full of humility and honesty and transparency and embrace the process. And you have a good therapist too. That's definitely part of the deal. But anyway, money exposes what's really deep down, and I think it's really important that we work through those deeper issues as we're doing this. So anyway, I just really love this conversation with Sean. I think it was so good for me to just to someone I love, that I respect, and whose opinion I trust, who's had a lot of success, but is very intentional. If you follow him on Instagram or Twitter, any place, you can see that he's very intentional about developing himself, about growing and becoming the man, the husband, the business owner, the leader that he needs to be. So awesome guest to have here. I would love to hear from you about what goes through your head, what goes through your mind. What are you thinking? What are you processing right now as you think about all this? I'd love to hear from you. You can go to businessfamilymarriage.com/voicemail. There's a link in the show notes here, and you can leave us a voice message. I'd love to feature some of those in an upcoming episode and reply to some of them. I'd love to have a whole episode just replying to comments and ideas that you guys are leaving here. So you can find a link to that down below. And you also find links to all of Sean's stuff in the show notes here as well. Think Media and his podcasts and stuff that he's doing if you want to check him out. So thank you for being a part of this awesome community. Thank you for giving me a place just to kind of process things out loud myself and talk about the things I'm learning and growing in related to business and family and marriage. I have so many ideas and things I want to do with this community as it grows. So thank you for being a part of it. And we'll see you again in the next Business Family Marriage podcast episode. See you then.